Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to RC Overload Tuesdays, where we answer your questions here on the show. And let's get started with our very first question today. I'm planning to get a large scale RC, but I'm not sure what to get. I've had my eye on the new Sen Reaper, but I'm unsure about it because the biggest RC I've had so far is a 1/8 buggy truggy. Any recommendations, advice? Do not hesitate to go bigger. Do not. Few of the pros about going to a bigger RC is that it's bigger, it's awesome, they're faster, they're bigger, they're badder. No, seriously, from what I've seen so far, the Sen Reaper looks amazing. If that's really what you want to go with, from the things that I'm seeing, I personally don't have one, but I would love to get one. I've watched Hemistorm's unboxing video. I've watched Azuzi RC's unboxing video. Both of those are great, two channels to check out. I'll drop the links to both of those in the description box for you to check out there. But from what I can tell, they look awesome. Don't hesitate. Yes, parts are going to be a little more expensive naturally for a bigger vehicle. You're going to need slightly larger batteries. I don't know exactly what that one takes. I can't remember. But don't hesitate to go larger. It's fun with the small little micros. It's fun with the 1/10 scale guys. But once I got my hands on like 1/8 scales and 1/5 scales and so forth, it is amazing. It's just 10 times more fun when you get a larger RC. It's awesome. I can't say anything more about that. But definitely, wait until, if anything, wait until some running videos come out, and see what other people's recommendations are, or how it actually drives or whatnot. But don't hesitate to go larger. Don't. Also, something to consider too is, even if you are going larger, just make sure you do have a little bit of a bigger area to run. Otherwise, it's going to be like having a lion caged in a really small box. It's just not that much fun. But if you can get a nice big open area to really let these bigger trucks let loose, you're not going to regret it by any means. Has this improved handling at all? Besides being beefier, do you feel like maybe it turns better and overall better performing? As far as the Axial Yeti X conversion that I did with CBRC Fab's kit that they have, it is an amazing kit. It really is. It transforms the front end of the Yeti to 110% beefier than what it is, even using the stock Traxxas Slash parts. And for those of you guys that don't know what this kit is, I will again leave a link in the description box so you guys can check out the installation and overview of the kit. But basically, it takes the front end of the Axial Yeti, completely cuts it right out, and you install a Traxxas Slash front end, which is significantly more beefier than that of the stock Yeti's front end. There's a couple of pros to it, a couple of cons to it. The pros are that it's beefier, it's going to handle better, there's a lot more upgrade options available for it. You can hit things in the front end and not worry about breaking it. So that's a couple of the pros. The cons are that it is very front end heavy. So when you are jumping it, it's gonna want to go nosedive. So make sure when you have the kit to constantly give throttle on it to keep it somewhat leveled in the air. It doesn't have the greatest turning ability. It's probably no better, maybe slightly worse, just slightly, maybe not even noticeable. Worse than the stock Yeti setup. It's been so long since I ran it, I would say it's comparable to the Yeti's steering, honestly. But it is, like I said, definitely front end heavy. You are going to need a beefier motor, something with a lot more torque to it. I was running a longer, I don't know if it was a 550 can. It's been so long since I've had it. My buddy Brett now has that setup on his. But overall, if you're looking to improve the Yeti and beef it up a bit, and you don't mind doing some customizing to it, you want something kind of different than what everybody else has, definitely look into that. And it is U4RC approved. It does keep the wheelbase the same. I know that that was a concern with some people, but that's something you don't need to worry about. So definitely look into it. It's very cool. I loved it. I thought it was awesome because you could just beat the heck out of it. But again, remember, it is very heavy, but it's also durable. So, what do you run your lights off of? Are they run from independent sources or straight from the receiver? If the receiver is the case, how do you have room for a BEC and all the other stuff required? Normally on most of my crawlers, like you see with the SCX10 and the SCX10 and the SCX10 II, most of that stuff is actually run right off the receiver. The light bar that you see right on the top of the Jeep here, that is actually separate. Now that's a Vanquish 6-inch light bar. For the optimum power, it does require a 3S LiPo. In the truck itself, I'm only running 2S. So I decided to pick up a really small 1300 milliamp 3S LiPo battery that I actually just Velcroed to the inside of the body. And I can plug it in or disconnect it whenever the heck I want. That way, you know, I don't need it to run off the battery at all times. I did run it off the receiver. It worked great. It just didn't stay bright enough long enough. It would actually kill the battery relatively quick, but having it on its own source, I can run it for a good hour or more off that 1300 milliamp and not have a problem whatsoever. Most of the stuff, like the lights that you would see on my bumpers, that is normally run right off the receiver. Anything on the chassis, how I set it up is you have a chassis and then you have body lights. And those are independent. What I mean by that is the chassis, those lights tend to go right to the receiver because if I'm pulling the body off, I don't want to have to keep disconnecting a whole bunch of wires just for the LED lights. But the body, on the other hand, what I try to do is I look for a light kit, something that I can just mount to the inside of the body and run all the wires and maybe just have one wire that goes straight to the receiver. Now, as far as a BEC goes, I have never actually needed a BEC. Then again, I haven't really had a lot of accessories. I haven't had to run a winch with all the LED lights. I haven't had a power-hungry servo. All the servos that I have require very little power to operate and run. And I just, you know, recently within the past year, finally get my first winch that I actually just put on the new SCX10 II just to try out a little bit. But again, I've never really needed a BEC. I haven't run that many things on my truck that's going to need that extra oomph and power to take care of that. Most of all my trucks I also run off of a 2S LiPo, which usually, for the most part, you can usually get away without needing a BEC. The only time I've ever should have gotten a BEC was when I got a coreless servo for my Yeti. When I first was putting that together, and I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't need that powerful of a servo in it, so I found an alternate servo that produced a decent amount of torque. I think what I was looking at before, it had like 300 and something ounces of torque. What I am running in there is like 200, 250. And that's just a regular servo, waterproof servo, and it's great. I didn't need the BEC on that. But again, LED lights, they don't really draw that much power. And I don't use them that often enough to where I wanted to spend the money and buy the BEC. For the most part, if you're questioning whether or not you actually need a BEC, what I usually do, just hook everything up and then go for a test drive. If you find it glitching out and it's blacking out or things just aren't working, then you might want to look into getting a BEC at that point. That's something I should look into more for you guys, is determining when you need a BEC, how well does it work, and so forth. But like I said, I've never run a BEC. All my trucks are totally fine. I get to run them, no problem. It's fine. Does the SCX10 II LCG tranny fit the SCX10? Yes, it does actually fit it. The only thing that you're going to need in order to make it fit is the actual center brace, the mount or the center skid, in other words, where the transmission mounts to. That needs to go into the SCX10. Time out. Yes, it totally does look like it'll fit in there, no problem. I haven't tried it, but in the SCX-10-2 kit, they do offer the original transmission setup, the skid plate there, the brace. So that tells me that it should drop in either truck, no problem at all. The screw holes do look exactly the same between the two chassis, so I don't see that being a problem. Last question. What batteries do you prefer? Yo, batteries that work. No, to me, I don't really have a specific preference. I've used quite a few different types of batteries over the years. And one thing that I've discovered is that the cheaper you pay for a battery, normally, and I'm going to explain this here in a second, normally the cheaper you pay for a battery, the less life you're going to get out of that battery. There are some exceptions. I've come across some companies like Reaction or Gens Ace. Both those batteries are relatively cheap for the most part, and they work very well. Right now I'm on a Gens Ace kick. I've just been buying Gens Ace batteries because they are cheap and I haven't had a single issue. The balances have been perfect in the batteries and they provide the power that I need for the trucks. I'm not looking to do speed runs or anything like that just yet, so I don't need an extreme battery for what I'm doing. I'm just a general backyard basher kind of guy. I'm not racing, I'm not doing anything like that, so just a general battery usually works for me. I've tried Max Amps. I've tried Traxxas. I've tried a few Chinese off-brands. You know, the Chinese ones, those suck. They don't last very long. They don't hold the charge long, and they tend to get off-balanced for a while. Max Amps are great batteries. I do love those batteries. They just, you know, like everybody else says, they are expensive. They really are. And unless I'm doing something speed runs or I'm doing actual racing against a competition, I personally cannot justify spending that kind of money all the time for those batteries. If I really want to get the optimum performance, absolutely, I would go towards Max Amps. Traxxas are great batteries. I love those actually. You know, it's funny, some people have a hit or miss when it comes to those batteries. Some people just never have a good Traxxas battery. Like take Brett for example. All the Traxxas batteries he's ever had have just puffed. But yet he's had other batteries and never had a problem. I have had several Traxxas batteries and never had a problem. So it's a hit or miss when it comes to Traxxas. But for the most part, Traxxas is a relatively decent battery. I have two LiPos, for instance, right now, that I used on my little 1/16 Revo that's behind me, the very first one that started like 3-4 years ago. I haven't used those batteries in over a year and a half, if not almost 2 years now, and they're still holding a perfect charge. I put them in storage mode way back, and they haven't changed. So it kind of gives you an example. For me, it's just, all right, what's a good company name? What's a well-known company name? And what size battery do I need? And let's do some price checking, you know, and compare against what it is. You know, I don't mind sometimes paying a little bit more for a better battery company if the price difference isn't that great, you know, if it's just a short price difference. But if anything, right now I'm on a Gens Ace kick. For now. It could change. Nothing ever stays the same with me. Alright guys, that is all the time I have for this week for questions. I know some of you guys had asked some questions, and which will actually be on next week's episode. But don't hesitate to ask more questions. The more the merrier. I can actually start making questions kind of related to each other, which actually wouldn't be a bad idea. But anyways, for this week's video recommendation goes to Harley Designs. He recently just did a live video stream of the new Losi Baja Rock Ray, which looks amazing. It looks cool. But I will let you give... excuse me. I will let him give you his opinion on the truck by checking out the video here. Again, link will always be in the description box for you guys. The video is a little over an hour long, but he really does take an in-depth look at this truck and kind of gives you an idea of what to expect with it. So, that's all the time I have for now, you guys. I'll see you next week, or actually in a few days, on the next RC Overload. Later.